Thank you everyone for coming out on this very rainy day. My name is Mary. I'm one of the family navigators at Autism Up, and I've just handed out some literature to the people who are here, and I'm so grateful that you are here. Autism Up is a local not-for-profit agency, and I'm just realizing that this presentation really doesn't touch on what we do, but this is a presentation on autism, but Autism Up provides supports and services for people across the lifespan, usually starting about 3, and our oldest participant just turned 63. So, that is what we do.
I don't think it's on.
Should I wait? No, closer? Oh, closer. There you go. Thank you. Sorry about that. I always want to do that, but it's up here. Once I was living in Spain and I was interpreting for a big event, and the gentleman got up, and we were in front of like 300 people, and he was nervous, and he was talking right on the microphone, and I was like, I can't understand a word he's saying. And so I just welcomed everyone. And when he started to talk again, I just moved the microphone away from his mouth. So I'm a little bit microphone. I like to keep it away from my mouth, so I apologize. I'll be more careful. I have a 26-year-old son with autism. He was diagnosed when he was just shy of 3 years old. Back then there wasn't a lot available, but now I think there is. It's a different world out there. There we go. So I am going to talk about what autism is, what you might see, and how you can help, right? And especially in a church setting, or any setting in life, right? So autism is a developmental condition. The neurological system is wired differently, right? It's much more sensitive. So someone might come into this room and be overwhelmed by the lighting, right? The sound system, maybe it's the echo, right? I saw that there's a sign that there's no coffee or tea allowed in here. So it might be a smell. Or maybe they changed a cleaning product. Maybe they put, what's that, rug stuff down, and you're like, ugh. So maybe something like that would be difficult for a person. The hard part is there is no medical test to diagnose it, to diagnose autism. It's an observational test. And so and full disclosure, I also work at the University of Rochester Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrics, where they do a lot of evaluating. And there's always a line on those evaluations that say, mom, dad, or caregiver states that the child's behavior during the exam, during the evaluation, is consistent with what they see, right? Because we do have those children who come in and all of a sudden they're presenting for the hour and a half, for those hours that they're with their providers, that they're not presenting the way they typically present with the family or at school. And autism is a spectrum disorder. You know what a spectrum is? Right? It's a circle. Right? It's not linear. You're not more autistic or less autistic. And the support needs are different. I always say, I use myself for an example. I'm pretty good with words. I write well, I read really well, I love reading, but please do not have me do mathematics. I won't cry, but I'll get real tense, and I might get acne, which is very unfortunate at my age to have wrinkles and acne because of math. I don't want to do it. So my support needs of math are pretty high, right? The others, reading, writing, figuring things out like that, I'm pretty good at. I don't need a lot of support, right? And so in autism, it might be that that social piece is really a struggle. We have people who are very gifted intellectually but can't tie their shoes, right? Who will only talk about their preferred topic, right? So it's all different. And I bet if we go around the room, everyone's going to say, well, yeah, I have support needs in this. I don't have support needs here, right? Some of us are wearing glasses. That's a support, right? As my daughter always says, it's unfair. I have to pay to see. Right? I have to pay to see. Autism is not a mental health disorder. It's not a result of just bad behavior, children being willful. And it's not bad parenting. Now, hold up. Can we have bad parents and bad behavior and things? Yeah, it all, you can have all of that. You can have mental health issues and have autism, right? They're not exclusive. Autism is not caused by mercury. It's not caused by vaccines. There's just all these studies. That is not why autism occurs. It's not curable. We've been hearing a lot that we're going to find a cure for autism. There's no cure for autism, right? It's a condition that's going to be with a person all their life. And I'm going to go to my son on this one. I remember years ago when he was about 20, I said to him, gosh, I'm so sorry I wasn't a better mother. I just didn't know what was your autism and what was you. He looked at me and goes, it's all me. He said, think of my autism like your glasses. He said, you're always complaining. My son has better than 20/20 vision. It's great. I love it. I brag about it all the time because I have terrible vision. But she said, think about my autism like your glasses. You're always complaining you have to go and get your prescription changed. He said, if I took your glasses away at home, you'd be fine. We know who you are. You might bump into some things, but you'd be fine. If I took your glasses away and sent you to Wegmans, people would start looking at you a little funny because you might bump into them. You might be going up to products and kind of squinting your eyes at them. You might hit somebody with your cart because I have very bad eyesight. He said, so you could be a danger to yourself and others. He said, if I took your glasses away and put you in your car on the thruway, driving, not as a passenger, he said, you would be a real danger. He said, that's how my autism is. If I don't have my supports, if I'm at home, I'm probably okay. If I'm in a smaller situation, Wegmans, but if I'm in a bigger one, right, it's hard for me. And I think about the insight that he has, and I thought that was helpful for understanding. It's not an aggressive or a disruptive individual, and it's not always paired with an intellectual disability. Sometimes you hear after a tragedy that, that person must have been autistic to do that. Usually people with autism are rule followers, right? And when my son was he was doing an interview for to get some government support, they said to him, now we have to ask you a question. Do you drink or take drugs? And he said, why would I do that? It's illegal. Right? So this kind of very differentiated thinking. That's illegal, that's good, that's bad. So I like to drive fast. And my son, when I'm driving with him, he's like, you are 5 whatever miles per hour over the speed limit. I'm like, that's fine. 5 is fine. It's 10 that's bad. And he's like, but it's still illegal. I like that sensation. I feel like I'm going somewhere. Right? And 55 is just not enough, right? So you can see these things with people with autism, right? You can have glasses, braces, and autism. Okay? That's not nothing's gonna. One's not going to exclude the other. This is what I call the dinner plate of autism. There are these 5 major areas on the dinner plate, of autism, and I'm going to quickly go over them in the next few slides. And please let me know if you have any questions, if you have any comments. I'm here to answer questions. The first is that social engagement, right? That can be difficult. Talking one-on-one with people, that cognitive flexibility. Why would I do that? That's illegal, right? Communication. My son, I joke that he came out of the womb speaking. He didn't really. But in his 26 years, he hasn't misplaced a pronoun. He just speaks, he speaks grammatically correct. He speaks better than many people. And there are other people with autism who don't have don't have expressive language yet. I say yet, I like to add yet to everything, because there's things I'm learning that I don't know how to do yet. The math, I've offered it up. I'm not gonna lie. I have a little thing on my phone, it's called a calculator, and it's very handy, and I love it. But sometimes when I'm feeling virtuous, I'll try to I do like long division or something like that to, help the little gray cells. But that, so there's some people who don't have expressive language yet. And so that's where this early intervention, and that's where therapies are really helpful. And it's sometimes people who do have expressive language but just don't understand some types of speech, and I'll get into that. The sensory dysregulation is a huge component, right? How many of you, when you're wearing stockings, feel different than when you're wearing your trousers, right? Stockings can be really uncomfortable, right? Sometimes some of them are more comfortable, I don't know, it depends on the brand. And then there's the associated medical conditions. I'm not gonna get too much into that in the slides. It can go kind of hand in hand with the sensory dysregulation, but I'm gonna put this down for a sec. So here's our brains up here, right? And you think, well, we're talking sensory, our senses, right? Everything's going through here, right? But our brain's all the way up here. We've got all this body that is taking in sensory input. And all of the sensory input, it's kind of, who remembers the can of worms? Right? Remember the can of worms? Mm-hmm. Remember what a mess it was? Yeah. It's not much better now, but it's a little better. Well, this is like the can of worms. This is the vagus nerve. So all that sensory input is going through, has to go through the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve sits between the stomach and the small intestines. What type of medical issues do you think might be associated with? Ulcers, yeah. Digestive issues. There's a lot of people with digestive issues, either constipation. Some people in school settings, they're like, well, we don't know why little, Frankie never wants to lie down. Maybe Frankie's vagal nerve is is dysregulated, right? And when he lies down, it's really upsetting to him. So different postures might be difficult, but the digestive issues are really common because of that vagal nerve. What do you know a stereotypical thing that people with autism, have you heard of something or seen something that you think, oh, that looks very autistic? No?
That they just gaze.
Flapping the ears when it's too loud.
Just
Gaze. One of them is rocking. Rocking. And when you rock, you are regulating your vagal tone, that vagal nerve, right? Anyone have an infant, right? What do you do to soothe them? You rock. And I would be curious, once you see somebody rocking, you kind of want to start rocking. It's relaxing, right? It's like scratching. If I start scratching,
or laughing.
or yawning, I can't even say the word, yawning, because then I yawn. Excuse me, it's not you, it's me. It is so, yes, that's a very contagious thing. But rocking will help self-regulate. And the anxiety is what I call the gravy on the dinner plate. Hello. It's all over. And we say, are people anxious because they have a hard time communicating and they have a hard time with these, or do they communicate poorly or have difficulties communicating because they're anxious? So is it the chicken or the egg? The thing is, anxiety is there. Right? So when we talk about communication, right, remember there's some people who might not have that expressive language yet. And one of the stepping stones to language might be echolalia. Do you know what echolalia is? So echo, right, is repeating. We're working on a project, and I say, hey Tina, do you want the red one or the green one? And little Tina, not you, little Tina says to me, green. But then I get distracted over here, and I turn back and I say, do you want the green one or the red one? And because I said red last, you say red. So I hand you the red one, and you cry, because you really don't want the red or the green. You want the blue. Wow. Right? But those weren't words that I offered you. Right? Echolalia, that could be one instance where you might see it. You might see it, and it might seem like sassing. My son got stopped by the police because his first day at MCC, you know how you have to cross those 2 lanes of traffic? There was an 18-wheeler coming, and he accelerated to get off at his exit, and there was a police officer. Police officer stopped him, knocked on the window. My son unrolled it, and the police officer said, "What's your name?" And my son said, "What's your name?" I'm like, oh my God, you're still alive, thank you. Right? I'm like, oh my God. And he gave him his license, and my son has with his license a card that says, I have autism. When I get stressed, I repeat things. So I was like, and I was like, thank me for having put that in his toolkit, right? There's that scripting thing too. So that repetition, what you want. Scripting, my friend's son didn't have any expressive language until he was about 7 or 8. And when he started speaking, it was all, he loved Thomas the Train. So it was all dialogue and things that were said during Thomas the Train shows. Thomas needs coal. Oh, that meant he was hungry, right? Because Thomas is a little coal engine. So it makes sense, but you have to know what's happening. My son will sometimes script, when he had a friend from Belarus, and whenever, I always knew what his friend had said, because my son would all of a sudden be speaking with a Belarusian accent. I'm not joking. So the same with my husband. English is my husband's 4th language, and sometimes I thought my son was being really fresh and like mimicking his dad, and I was like, you can't do that. It took me a while, and then I figured he was scripting. It was like when they were taking the car apart, and my son would tell me about it, and he would also all of a sudden be using his dad's voice. I'm like, that's so rude. Like, it's pretty good. And then I like mimicry. I'm not gonna lie. And so I was like, he's pretty good. And then I was like, oh, he's scripting. That's what he's doing. There might be this difficulty with reciprocal conversation, right? If I say, hey, how are you? What are you doing? And doing fine, thanks. Funny about this weather. Yeah, this weather's crazy, isn't it? Right? So going back and forth, it's hard. Because remember I talked about the sensory realm? They say that people with autism, the input is thousands of times faster, and there's just more of it than with a neurotypical person. That's the wiring in their system. And so if I come up to you and say, hey, how are you doing? Oh, I love your hair today. I love your earrings, right? What are you going to answer first? Oh, thanks, my mom gave me these, oh, what are you going to answer first? And so, or they might just be looking at you like, wait, do I know you from somewhere? Right? Because I usually know you from school, and we're at Wegmans. So, so there could be that difficulty, all these other things that are coming into play. You might hear a monotone voice, and that, for anyone who's looking to have a child or evaluated, that's one of the things that they look for. How does a child talk, if they do talk? Is it a robotic tone, right? My son, before, he always spoke correctly, but it was very robotic until he started making more friends or hanging out with, like, this little boy from Belarus, and then that his language was the language of his friends. And that's how he started to communicate better. There might be precocious language, right? And then you watch that, like Samuel Goldwyn, MGM, Samuel Goldwyn, he used to misuse language a lot, and it was very funny. And sometimes children will say something like, oh, the class was very difficult. We had to crawl under something, and I was like an extortionist. And you're like, they mean contortionist, right? But so sometimes there's misuse of words that they've heard, they kind of know, but they don't really know. So it's an interesting thing. I've spoken a little bit about children who are nonverbal, who don't have that expressive language, and we really try to use, I've got to remember to take that out, because that nonverbal, it is a descriptor, but they don't have that expressive language yet, right? Try to be a little bit more respectful. And that difficulty with expressions and sarcasm is one of my favorites. That Mary, she's a real butterfingers. And then you look at my fingers, they're not. Are you talking the candy bars, or are we talking sticks of butter? What are we talking about here? No, it means I'm a klutz, right? I drop things all the time, right? So those types of expressions, it's raining cats and dogs out there. Dude, I want a dog, I'm going to go outside and see if I can get one. So these types of expressions can be difficult. And interpreting nonverbal cues. You and I are talking, but you really want to get going, and so you stand up and you zip your coat up, and I'm like, wait, but I got to tell you one more thing. One more, and they're like, you're fishing for your keys. These are all signs that you want to go, but I'm just not paying attention because I'm talking to you about what I want to talk about. So that can be difficult. So sometimes if you're talking with someone and you have to go, instead of just doing those, like picking up your purse, putting your coat on, say, thanks, Franks. I love talking to you, but I have to get going to whatever, to my next class, right? And then I want just ask that you think, what would you do if you couldn't communicate effectively? Right? How would you feel? What might you do? How could you communicate? Right? I remember there is a woman from Italy in the waiting room. I work at Developmental Behavioral Peds, and she was from Italy, and I was talking with her a little bit, and my Italian's rusty, to say the least, and I was slow answering her, and she started repeating herself, but like she was getting louder and louder, saying the same thing, and I said, it's not that I can't hear you, it's that I don't understand you yet. Could you speak slower? Okay? Because that's one of our things. Oh, I'm just gonna get louder. Getting louder, and we have a friend in the back there who's got headphones on, right? Getting louder is not gonna help, it's gonna escalate things. Why? Because it's charging up that sensory system. These social interactions can be very difficult. This is a big space, right? So being around this many people could be overwhelming. There's different smells, there's different, just the activity, right? Of all the kind of the bristling energy that humans have, that bring with them, right? Sharing interests in space. I wanna talk to you about what I like. I like Legos. And I'm gonna tell you all about different Legos. You could care less about Legos. You want to talk to me about planets. You like the planetary systems. You are interested in the universe. I don't care about the universe unless there's a Lego that is a solar system, and then I want to talk to you. Finding common ground, right? So this establishing and maintaining friendships, and I don't know if this is recorded, but I feel really bad. My son's 26, he's got a girlfriend, she's delightful. But I said to him, why don't you just go out and like meet other people? And he said, now how am I supposed to do that? And then I realized he was dead serious. And I said, do something you like and you'll meet other people. And he said, that's not for me. Aha. He's got to learn about this still, right? And that kind of breaks your, it was like, wow, I was thinking everything was going pretty smoothly, but that hurt was really evident when he said that to me. Predicting others' reactions is really difficult. That's how come many people will say, well, my 4-year-old gets along really well with adults, but has a hard time with other 4-year-olds. Of course. The other 4-year-olds are 4-year-olds. We adults should know to listen and to ask and to engage. So hopefully that's how come, right? That's how come it's easier. Because we know how to predict. We've had a lifelong of predicting other people's reactions. Taking other people's perspective. I've heard people here, I know I should be happy for you because you just graduated, but I don't really feel, I'm saying congratulations, but I don't really feel anything about it, right? So there's this kind of bluntness, right? I'm saying congratulations, but so that taking another person's perspective is hard. Regulating emotions, it's hard for all of us, right? I'm not gonna lie, the other day, when I made that crack to my son, I was having a hard day. I was having a really hard day. Hadn't slept, my husband had, been sick, all this stuff. And so if it's hard for me, I have had and I work in this, I know about sensory regulation. I still get dysregulated, right? My dogs didn't want to walk this morning. Uh-oh, you've got a dysregulated person standing in front of you. I tried to, shake it off and stuff, right? Move it out. But we, as adults, we've been around our bodies for a long time. We know what we need. Our children don't. Younger people don't. And so that might be something you see. This eye contact, that's another thing they always say about people with autism. They don't look you in the eyes. There's even, it's a pretty good book, Look Me in the Eyes. It's overrated, right? But think about it. For a person who takes in thousands more sensory input, poetically, our eyes are the windows to our soul. Tell me that's not a lot. I'm looking into your soul. Hello? I don't want to see all that. No offense. That's a lot for me. And if I have difficulty with communication and self-regulation and this, looking into another person's eyes, you're asking a lot of them. I put this little picture up there because I thought it seems strangely appropriate. I'm not socially awkward. You simply failed to follow the script in my head for our interaction, which I had meticulously written in advance. Okay? My son says that to my husband all the time. Look, Papa, I don't know what's in your head. You have to use your words and tell me. I'm like, thank you. I've only been telling him that for decades. But now his son's saying it to him. It has some effect. So I like that because also for those of us with children, with younger children, sometimes you'll get a message from school saying, Frankie, and my little imaginary Frankie is naughty Frank Sinatra. Don't ask. It just seems that he was such a rascal. Rascal's got a positive edge, but he seems like he probably was a difficult child. But you might get a note from the school saying, little Frankie was in line and he just rolled over his line of friends with a toy car. He's just so disruptive, so disrespectful. And then you talk to little Frankie and he's like, friends, they were mountains. I had the car in my hand, and I was going over each one, each mountain. It's a different way of looking things, right? It's what was in his head. And it wasn't bad, it was just what he was doing at that time. That cognitive inflexibility is really tough some of the time. You mightn't see that someone insists on the sameness. Whenever I come in, I always sit here. And then I come into mass and somebody else is sitting in my seat. That's not okay, right? That's hard. So there's this resistance to change. You might see repetitive behaviors. I love it. I have, I'm in the library at the clinic, and I have a box of toys, and I don't know how many times a day all my cars and trucks are lined up. Mm-hmm. And then my action figures. I love seeing who's doing what with what. It's a lot of fun. Repetitive behaviors it's not just that with toys. It could be, again, the self-regulating behaviors, the rocking, the twisting of the hair. There's a whole range of activities. And everyone's different, right? We're all, some of those repetitive behaviors, they're soothing. And some people are like, we have to stop that. They're, those vocalizations are really distracting. I can't have that in my classroom, okay? And I was saying to Pam before, in our parish we have an older adult who has significant support needs, and he doesn't have any expressive language. And I love it because in the responses, he responds, and in the hymns, he knows and he sings, the response part. And when he's not at Mass, I always miss him because he's really added depth to the service. It's really lovely. And at first I was just thinking, when I was younger, I was like, oh, that's noisy. Right? That kind of humility, and now, he adds to it, and it's really lovely. And he loves being there. So these repetitive behaviors sometimes are soothing. Some of them can get difficult. It could be excoriation, where I'm not scratching to make you scratch. They could be picking, right, and making themselves bleed. And that could be related to they're dysregulated and they're anxious, right? Some people pull their hair out. Same thing, right? Intense preoccupations with certain topics, right? I bet you didn't know that you are looking at a woman who knows a lot about the 2,000 years of Cybertronian history. Transformers, the robots in disguise. Transformers, more than meets the eyes. That's my son's favorite. I would that you knew as much about American history as you know about Cybertronian history. Right? So, but then I can't talk. My older siblings, I'm the youngest of 8. They, the series of The Lord of the Rings, the books. My oldest brother spoke Elvish and Dwarvish. So this intense preoccupation with certain things, yeah, it goes. Have you, I'm going to say, I should have asked this up front. How many of you know someone who is autistic or is neurodivergent, right? So you might have seen some of these things. When my son was diagnosed, it was 1 in 168 children were diagnosed with autism. Now it's 1 in 38. And I'm really bad at math, but even I can figure out that the probability of knowing someone, right, whose life is touched by a neurodivergent person, it's really gone up, right? And I think it's because we're also more aware of it, right? Remember how I said my brother learned Elvish? Hello. And that's his thing. He can learn languages very easily, right? Does not have high support needs around language. I don't think, but he's worked at other things. This unawareness of danger or consequences, I don't know why. My son just darts into the street. I don't know why. He just jumps from things. Right? We're going to get into that when we talk about sensory. Right? This literal linear thinking. Hey, you said we were going to be doing X, Y, and Z, and we're doing A, B, and C. Not okay. I might have a difficult time with that. These sudden mood changes, I used to substitute in the bilingual autism classrooms in the city, and we had this one little boy who was sweetest tempered little child. One day he got off the bus. He was just grumpy, you could just see it. Wouldn't play with his friends nicely before circle time, was just being not like him at all, like himself. Then circle time started, and all of a sudden he took his sneaker off and threw it across the room. I'm like, what? This is not like this child. And we looked at his foot and his sock. His big toe was sticking out of his sock. Again, this was a child without expressive language. Do you know how uncomfortable it is to walk around with a hole in your sock? Super uncomfortable. We got him a new pair of socks, and guess what happened? Everything was sunlight and roses. It was fantastic. That's all it was. He had a hole in his sock. Right? So it might be a sudden mood change. You might not be seeing it. We always say, look at the child physiologically. Is there something going on? Are they wearing uncomfortable clothes? Or did they have a growth spurt? Are those shoes too small? Are their molars coming in? Right? We always forget about the teeth. I always say, have you checked their mouth? How many new teeth are in there? And there might be a real rejection of being touched, or all of a sudden they want that sensory input. Okay? This always putting things in the mouth. Maybe there's pica. Maybe there's, they're just always chewing on things. Our jaws are super powerful. So how many of you chew gum? Okay. I'm really bad. I started to chew gum again because I've been anxious. I don't know why, since January I'm super anxious. And so my son said, there's forever chemicals in those. Are you chewing gum?
No, we can't. Tina's here.
Oh.
I don't like chewing.
No, we can't. Please, I can't. I had a Spanish teacher in high school, and I cannot speak Spanish with gum in my mouth to this day because she terrified me. And she'd come around with a basket. Yeah, No. But, so my son will say, and also, well, you're good, Tina, you're good because chewing gum, just so you know, has forever chemicals in it. My son has told me. And then he says, but you're so old, it probably doesn't matter. What? Isn't that bluntness, right? What?
Most of them pop the gum, when they chew it, pop, 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 pop.
Oh, yeah. Well, when I have a good piece of Hubba Bubba in my mouth, I can do 4 bubbles in a row, like inside each other. Thank you very much. I can leave on that. Very talented woman in front of you. I will not pop it in front of you. But it can be very relaxing. So we have many students, once they get into middle school where they are allowed to chew gum, except in Spanish class, all of a sudden a lot of behaviors improve because they're doing something with their mouth. I purposely give my son celery and carrots and things that are hard to chew because that's actually relaxing. And celery is super healthy, right? It's got to have the cleanest kidneys in Rochester, I tell you. So if you can find a food that your child likes that's crunchy and healthy, lay it on them. Okay? Meltdowns are very common because, again, that little boy with the hole in his sock, sometimes the sensory world's too much, and they just melt down. A temper tantrum is very different. I'm going to quickly tell you my favorite temper tantrum story. My friend, whose 2 children have autism, was in Wegmans. She was in the cereal aisle. And there's a mom with a cart, and there was a child, little girl, on her floor kicking and screaming. So my friend went to turn her cart to leave, but the little girl saw her, scooched over in front of her mom's cart, and motioned to my friend to go by. Now that's a temper tantrum. She knew exactly what she was doing, and she was doing it to get whatever cereal she wanted. My friend took her cart, went by, said to the mom, "You're doing a great job. Don't give in." Because that was a temper tantrum. It would be a different thing if all of a sudden the child, you walk into the store and it's just, they go boneless, and something's going on, right? There's something is overwhelming. I had a case where we had one child who wouldn't go into the cafeteria some days, and they were like, he would just like melt down, would freeze at the door, look like an animal, and then try to run. It turned out he didn't like the smell of tomato sauce. You know how hard it was to figure that one out? But once they figured it out, then they started doing that kind of exposure therapy. They let him eat in a separate room, and then, that was a couple of weeks, and then they had someone walk by with pizza, and then spaghetti, and eventually they got the child back into the cafeteria so they could learn the social interaction. They could practice that. It's important. It's important to help people learn to do things, because in this world, there are other human beings, right? And we have to build our capacity. And that acknowledging and understanding verbal and nonverbal cues, again, you want to get going, you're jingling your keys at me, and I'm like, dude, I have got to tell you about Optimus Prime and what he did to Megatron, right? And you're like, I don't care. I don't really care about Megatron. I really hate Megatron, by the way. Anyways, there's a whole different conversation, but expressing needs. I don't know how to tell you that I have a hole in my sock. I don't know how to tell you that I'm overwhelmed at school, and my teacher, says we're going to do something, and then we do something else, and that's really frustrating to me. So it's hard to figure some of these things out, right? Again, that lack of eye contact. I remember my son he goes up to his professors before every semester and says, "Look, I just want to let you know that I'm taking notes, I'm listening, but if I look at you, I can't take notes." Because then he's going to start thinking, are those new glasses? I don't think the professor had those glasses. So if he's doing this, he's absolutely fine, because his ears are hearing absolutely everything. If you ask him after class, he will tell you verbatim what the professor said in the professor's voice. It's kind of interesting. And this continuous movement, right? You might see a lot of movement, and again, that's regulating that vagal tone. Oh, I don't know why that ends. Sensory dysregulation. It's when the sensory system, right, our whole neurological system gets overwhelmed. So again, you have to be aware of the environment. If you notice that some people are overwhelmed, I know sometimes in the library I'll just turn off the lights. I should be able to turn them down, but I don't know how to do that after 8 years. And what are the 8 senses? Right, we know the 5, right, the big ones. Smell, touch, sight, sound, and taste. Right? Then there's these other weird ones. The vestibular is balance, right? There's some people who have difficulty balancing, right? Sometimes the typical people, does he walk on his tiptoes? Right? It could be because their sense of balance is off, right? It's like walking. We have some people. Remember waterbeds? Waterbeds? Have you ever? One of my sisters had one, and I remember as a little girl walking across it, right? And you'd go like this, and it was very cool. But that's how I imagine that sensation of not having the world, even, we think we have something solid underfoot. I know that. That's secure. Not for everyone, right? Or think of those moving walkways at the airport, right? Or an escalator. And sometimes that first step on or off, you're like, whoa, right? That's that vestibular sense, right? Proprioception is your awareness of your body in space. Can I shut my eyes and touch my nose? If I put one arm up, can I do the same thing with the other arm? And I can do some of that, but I can't pat my head and rub my stomach. I've tried, but that's one of these senses. And a sense that is very much a challenging area is interoception, the last one. And that is, am I hungry? Am I thirsty? Am I feeling pain? Right? My friend's son broke his ankle. Didn't sprain it, he broke it. It was like this, you know. Didn't cry. Right? So these are things to be aware of. Interoception could also, do I have to go to the bathroom? Toileting could be a big problem if you don't feel that your body needs to evacuate, you're not going to be able to do that easily, right? That's how come routines and schedules help. So those are our 8 senses, and regulation looks like having self-control, right? Again, I'm going back to my kindergartner with the hole in his sock, right? He could usually control himself, but he was dysregulated. That rubbing on his toe, come on. That's harsh, right? And having that emotional control. Impulse control, right? It's a person's ability to adjust their alertness to what their body's needs are. And before you go to bed, do you want to do, what are they called, jumping jacks? Or do you want to have some lavender and do some deep breathing, right? Take a bath, right? You're not going to do alerting things like jumping jacks or a brisk walk right before bed. You get up in the morning, your coffee machine isn't working, you better go take a brisk walk. You better do something to alert yourself, right? To get yourself going. So this is regulation. And if you're not regulated, your senses, your processing system isn't going to work. And it could be, and if your processing center isn't working, you could be hypersensitive. I'm sorry, the first thing that came to mind is my daughter, when she was a little girl, she was taking piano classes, and she had the best, nicest, most gentle woman as her piano teacher. And I was in the living room during the piano lesson, and the piano teacher went like this and looked at my daughter and said, "It seems like you didn't practice this week." Swear to God, in that tone of voice. The class ended. We walked out. About 2 houses down, my daughter started to cry and said, "Did you hear her scream at me?" Someone was a little hypersensitive, right? Do you know why? She hadn't practiced at all. She deserved that, right? But that hypersensitive, she wasn't regulated, right? She knew, right? And all of a sudden, all this dysregulation. So this is for any person. Any person. It's not just a person with autism or FASD or some other neurological condition. And then there could be the hyposensitive, okay? And not knowing how much. So again, with the interoception, it could look like stuffing your mouth with food. Granted, there's sometimes I like to stuff my mouth with food, I'm not gonna lie, but I know how much food I can put in my mouth. And so oftentimes on our feeding clinic, they'll look and they'll say, well, take a spoonful, and that's what you put in your mouth. And that's fine for foods that you eat with utensils, but then when you're faced with a piece of pizza, right, how much of that are you putting in your mouth? And then it becomes a choking hazard, right? So that's the hyper and hyposensitivities, and then there could be completely shutting down. So when the body is so escalated, right, it goes into that fight or flight, but one we forget about is the freeze. What the heck do I do? And it might look like the person is just ignoring you, but it could be that their processing system. How many of you have seen the little blue circle on your computer go like this, little dots? It's processing, it's processing, that's what's happening. And doesn't it make you nervous? If I'm standing up here and presenting, I'm gonna do it, hold on. And I just stop talking. That was only 5 seconds. That's nothing. But it's kind of like, what the heck? That's weird. Right? It's disconcerting, right? So what can you do? remain calm, physically and verbally, right? You're not, you're just kind of, I can see that you're processing. I'm not gonna run up to you and say, are you okay? Are you okay? Don't worry, I'm not gonna hurt you. Oh my God, now she's gonna hurt me? Well, now I'm really upset, right? So just kind of remain calm. Provide time for the person to shift gears. How many people have know how to drive manual? Stick shift? You know neutral? I actually want my son to make me a seat with the stick shift for parents, so they can feel what neutral. You know when you wobble the stick? Isn't that great? Doesn't that you get it? And it's just you're like, yeah, I'm getting into gear. I'm getting into gear, right? And so it's a great physical way to feel what that might feel like. And you're freezing. Do you want my vest?
Oh, no.
Are you sure?
I have my coat, yeah.
I have my vest. It's very warm. Okay. Just so you know, when I'm cold, I can't think. So, provide time for that shifting gears, right? Avoid debates. You're not going to win. So, let me think about that. Interesting. I've never thought of it that way. So choose your battles and avoid using the word no. How many of you have heard of something called, hold on, I always have to think about it because PDA, no, it's public display of affection. Remember, my mom was like, no PDA. But it's pervasive disorder, avoidance disorder, pervasive avoidance disorder. So in the United States, it's not recognized as a thing, but it is avoiding the word using no. So don't start with a negative, right? Okay, your child doesn't want to go to school. So what are we gonna have for breakfast first? It's a school day, so what do you want for breakfast? Would you like waffles or would you like the yogurt and granola? You're going to school, but I'm giving you choices along the way. No, you can't stay home. Now you've put that idea back in my head. I'm gonna stay home, right? So there's some things you can do. And when we're talking about that regulation, you're gonna help them co-regulate. It's that ability to soothe others by keeping your, as my mom would say, by keeping your caramel cool, right? That was a big one in our house. Keep your caramel cool, kids. But it helped because we all figured out with 8 children that if one was calm, we could keep the others calm. And then we could get what we wanted. We weren't stupid. So children who haven't learned to regulate, they'll need help from the adults. And hopefully we'll be in a place where we can help them, right? And when these situations are consistent in consistent environments, it helps build capacity for the child and our own capacity, right? Again, help by using plain language, concrete, don't use that expressive, don't be a butterfingers, keep our language simple, give space for the answers, for a reaction, keep your voice calm and steady. And sometimes my son will say, I'll say, hey, did you take the garbage out? And he will say, oh, would you stop yelling at me? I said, I'm not yelling at you. Oh, you are. You're yelling around the edges of your voice. I hate that. And I said, well, I could really yell if you want. But I said, neither one of us are going to like it. Oh, okay, right? It's not going to help, right? So just try to keep calm. I always say, you see that wall of my imaginary Oscars that I've won by keeping calm? I have a big wall of Oscars, right? Because sometimes you have to play to keep calm, right? Frame things in the positive, not the negative. Again, for asking for requests, but also instead of saying, I'm not gonna hurt you, don't worry. Oh my God, again, are you gonna hurt me? So you're safe here. right? Frame in the positive, right? We're all working on this. I'm going to be right beside you, right? And don't worry isn't a great one either. Now what am I worrying about? I'm worrying about worrying. It's even worse, right? I don't even know what I'm supposed to worry about. Oh my gosh. Now, now I'm a tremble. And refer to rules. Again, remember that when I said what autism isn't, right? It's not someone who purposely breaks rules. Usually, these people search for rules. They search for their routines because they're certain, right? When you're stressed out, you want to do things that are familiar, right? You want to go home and you want to, watch the TV show or reread the book that you've read because you know where it's going. When I go home, I don't want to do anything stressful, and I'd prefer it to have ice cream involved in it. That's not stressful, but that's also soothing. Respect the individual. Ask what you can do to help, right? And less can be more. The less sensory input that you're giving, sometimes the better, right? A lower voice. Maybe not, making sure that the person is safe, but not looking them in the eyes, right? So kind of this averted gaze. And treat everyone with respect, right? Everyone deserves respect and dignity. I don't care. Pam said that you had to talk about Alzheimer's. Just because somebody doesn't remember doesn't mean they're not a person. Yeah? So dignity, respect, and everyone's going to have this sensory component, right? So rules are good, and I clicked because I thought the next slide was the sensory thing, but that's okay. When people have rules, it's easier to follow. They know what's coming up. How many of you, it's hard when you don't know what to expect when you're going into a situation. And person-centered is the most effective thing at any age, right? Our participants who are 3, their siblings who are younger, and our older participants in their 60s. And prepare for success by creating a welcoming environment. This is a beautiful facility, right? But when you come in here, you have a clear rule. There's no coffee, no tea, and no chewing gum, right? There's none of that. But once you decide that, that's the rule for everyone, right? That is not tea. That is water, just so you know, right? So these clear expectations help everyone, right? You post schedules. It's creative, right? And when someone does well, he's doing a great job. And you're doing a great job keeping your cool, right? It helps, right? Fidgets are always great. So some places got the headphones back there, but having something to do with your hands, or some places, those exercise bands? Some people have busy feet. We tried, I thought I was so clever with my son. This was before all of this was really had taken off. I had one of those exercise bands on his chair for his feet, but his feet weren't busy. His hands are busy. That's how come he likes those transformer toys. You transform them one way, you transform them the other ways. His busy hands. So things that he can have in his hands are great. Headphones, sometimes things are too loud. My son used the noise-canceling earbuds. He still does. And sometimes sunglasses. So let's say these lights don't go down, but you see someone coming in like this. If you have go to the dollar store, pick up a bunch of sunglasses, not the ones with grid, with prescriptions, because that will just make everyone's eyesight worse. But so sometimes you have to think about it. And then did you just hear was it air conditioning or the other lights? There's some buzzing that just turned on. So let's say all of a sudden there's a reaction to that, but we're kind of not listening to it, but he might be. Absolutely. Right? So fidgets are great. That's when modifying the environment. Think about seating. Maybe you have seating in the back or near the aisles, because it's also important to, again, build that capacity. So just because you've got an active child doesn't mean you want to isolate them, right? Because they're part of the community, right? And talking about the fast little children. There's a child who wants to help you during the services, who comes up. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So build it in, because it might happen, right? And my sister was a teacher, and she had a student with Tourette's, and she would pace the whole time at the back of the classroom, and when he would say something, she'd try to incorporate. She taught French and Spanish, so she would incorporate it into the lesson, right? So use it. It's going to happen. Why not use it? And provide opportunities for movement. I'm not moving as much as I usually do. I usually pace this way, so it's kind of harder for me to go this way. I don't know why. But aisles provide movement, right? Good and bad. And if you're in a situation where you have maybe something where you do want to have you don't want to have in Spain they call it a spontaneous situation, right? Maybe have like a cart or something to stop that. You know what I mean? There's different things you can do. Keep involvement, but sometimes you need to maintain a little bit more order. Maybe you just say so at the outset. Maybe you have a visual schedule, right, where you have pictures. This is what you can expect today. That's helpful. And always provide warnings for transition. We're going to be going into the break room after this. If you do have anyone who's an eloper, this is a huge thing, and I'm just a safety person. Eloping is when a child gets overwhelmed and they run, or a person does. So if anyone knows anyone like that, if you're in an organization, I would let people know, right? Take it seriously. You can also have these anger scales, right here. How are you feeling? Are you calm? What's your level, right? And we parents can use this. I use it with my husband some of the time. Hey, very angry. You don't want me to get to the red zone because I don't want to be Spider-Man in a bad way. This is what I was talking about, a social story. So it lets people know, it gives you an outline of what we're going to be doing, right? Yep.
Go back to your, yes, I will take it.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
And if you want, I can send you things. When I say things, I can send some visual supports and things like that if you're interested. There's one problem. I can't cut a straight line. I can't. I mean, I took an art class and my professor was like, the art's great, but your craftsmanship is really subpar. And I said, it's because I can't cut a straight line. He's like, I have all these tools, I have vices, I have things. Nope. I let my friend cut my straight lines because so when I do these things, I always warn parents, things are going to be crooked, but you'll have them. Because it's true, I can't cut a straight line. So social stories are handy. I have a bunch of social stories. If you ever need them, I have them for all types of doctor's appointments. Because when we know what we're getting into, it's easier. Okay? Oh, and this is my homage to my mom. Do you know who these people are? Mm-hmm. Yep, Annie Sullivan. So my mom met Helen Keller. That's how my parents, like I said, I'm the youngest of 8. So my parents would be in their hundreds, I think. So when my mom was in nurses training, Helen Keller came and spoke to them. And I say spoke because she spoke, and my mother was always like, oh, it was awesome, but not in the California awesome, but like it was kind of really impressive and kind of scary, right? Because back in the 30s, people with such severe disabilities weren't out and about. They were mostly institutionalized. But here Helen Keller was, and she's talking to the nurses. And I have a love-hate relationship with her because my mom would then say to us, if Helen Keller could do it, so can you. Right? And she's right. But no one thought Helen Keller could do that until Annie Sullivan came along and unlocked her, helped her unlock herself, I should say. Because it was all in there. Right? We have a young man at Autism Up who he's got apraxia, so he can't formulate words with his mouth, but he communicates and he's very smart. The first thing he did when he got a communication device was to type in, "I'm not stupid." And then his mother was planning a trip to Niagara Falls, and she had written Niagara, and he said Niagara is spelled, because she had misspelled Niagara, and he spelled it right. So it's in there. Presume competence. Please don't use baby language. Use correct terms. Right? It's disrespectful not to. Right? Just because someone doesn't talk doesn't mean you treat them like a baby. Just because someone doesn't remember, don't treat them. It's always this dignity and respect. Right? Do you have? I'm gonna change the question slide and I'm gonna put it on this slide just because. Oh, drat. This. Why doesn't it? Hold on. This should have. There's a fourth email that should be there, but it's not there. It's just navigator@autismup.org, and that's probably the best one to use. So if you use that protocol, just put navigator@autismup. I am Mary. I'm the middle one. But that, you know, and so now, if anyone, I'm going to leave that. But does anyone have any questions? Questions?
I don't have as many questions or comments. I'm a preschool teacher, and this was a very challenging year for me. I had one student who came to me that I knew right away there were some things going on. And finally, we finally got a one-on-one for him in my classroom. However, next year I'm concerned for him because he is going to a particular school, and his younger brother also has been diagnosed. And I noticed the things that he does is if he's wet, he will give you a full Monty right away. Mm-hmm. So those are things that we know, but also he uses it as a defiant way too, because he's nonverbal. I think families and co-workers and community really needs to understand the autism piece. I have another student who I think is it apraxia you called it?
Apraxia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, his speech teacher thinks that's what's going on with him, because he can only verbalize a sound. He cannot say words, but he understands me, and he will communicate with me with a no. But what do you do for families like that? I'm trying to get that particular family to understand that there are more things going on with him than they understand.
So there's a few things. Did the child get early intervention? So you're preschool.
Yes, I'm a 3-year-old preschool teacher, so he's getting intervention, but he did not get early intervention. Mm-hmm. The other student, who is an autistic student, relocated back to Rochester, did receive it for a short period of time. But we actually got him just hooked up to Autism Up. So.
Oh, good. Yeah, and so that's a huge thing. There's Autism Up, if you look at their classes, they're pretty expensive. That's because they have the instructor, who's usually a professional, and then if it's a class of 12, there might be 8 support staff. That's old. And they're trained, and they're fingerprinted, and they're this and that, right? So because this is a vulnerable population, right? And they should be trained, and they should, all this stuff should be happening. But they do have a lot of scholarships. That's where I was going with it. You just have to ask. And it's on the website, actually. And if you look at the website on the programming page on the right-hand side, it says scholarships. But what can you do? I would say to the parent, okay, so if they had early intervention, are they registered in their school district? And the school district should start giving those services.
Yes, they're both in my classroom. Like I said, the one is to not get early intervention. And the parents, I think, are a little bit in denial
Does he have an IEP?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's where you can say to the parent, and you can send them to us, like the family navigators at Autism Up, or if they're seen at clinic at Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrics, part of Strong, we oftentimes will say, well, you know, I'm one of the family navigators there too. So we can help advocate, or you can say, if he has an IEP, which school district?
Rochester City.
Mm-hmm. So Rochester City School District has a great thing. They have, every month they have a virtual meeting, sorry, with their special ed department. And the first part of the meeting is, it's informative, what's going on in the school district, what are we doing, what are our updates? And then the second, and I usually go to that part because I'm a community member, Autism Up and at clinic, and I want to know what's going on in the city school district, right? And when I used to work there, so it interests me, right? I'm nosy. And the second, then the community people leave, and it's just the parents, and they get to talk right with the special ed administrators and say, I'm having trouble with this. What should I do? In this case, I would ask if they haven't had their annual IEP, it's coming up, I would have them write out a list of concerns. If I were you, I'd say, these are some things I'm seeing in class.
Well, I did talk
Good.
online with the parents and
Yeah.
told them how I felt. And I said, you are the first teacher, you are the advocate. You have to make that decision, but this is what I think would be beneficial,
Mhm.
and you make the final decision at the meeting. So they are aware of my thoughts.
Mhm.
I thought it was important that I let them know that prior to the meeting.
Yeah.
So they understand that I'm on their side, but at the same time, what is the best for your student?
Yeah. Because early and often, Pam and I were talking about this before, it's very distressing for us with all of the cuts, the federal and state cuts to spending. We've noticed that agencies are prophylactically cutting services. I'm like, oh, no, don't.
Especially this year, I think there's an onslaught of students who are being misdiagnosed for one, and then putting in environments. I have a classroom of 12 boys and 6 girls, and out of those 12 boys, 5 or 6 of them need more than what I can give them. 4 of them, no, 3 of them do have an IEP, but there's so many that don't.
Yeah.
And it's increasing.
So the ones that need it and don't have an IEP, right? Starbridge on their website has template letters that you can use, that you fill in. They're a little clunky to use now. I should say something, but they're good letters, and you just fill in your child's information and say, I would like my child to have a complete psychoeducational evaluation because of these reasons. Once the school district receives that, they have 60 calendar days to actually evaluate your child.
Yes, and I'm aware of that process.
Yeah.
The problem is getting the families to understand. So many of them, and I tell them, I said, this is where you want to get the support. This is pre-K. It doesn't follow them in the sense that you're thinking, because they think once they're labeled, they're labeled. I said, they have to be labeled.
Right.
The only way you can get help is to have a label. If you no label, no help.
And
So
yeah, no, and then you get the one parent. If you have the 2 parents, you have the one parent who says, I was like that, I'm fine. My child doesn't need anything because I'm fine. Yeah. Oh,
IEP.
an IEP is the individual education program.
Yeah, and what that does for a teacher in the classroom as well as for the parent, it ensures that a student gets the help that they need. There are certain specific things on that IEP that has to be done. And if it's not, then they're violating the child's rights.
It's a legal binding document. And if to make any change to it, the parent has to meet with the school team and sign off on any changes. The thing is, the reasoning behind it, let's say I have a child, Frankie again, and he's got an IEP, this individualized education program. And he's getting all the services he needs. He's got a one-on-one aide. He's getting speech language therapy. He's getting occupational therapy. He's getting physical therapy. But I'm moving to Norman, Oklahoma tomorrow. And he's going to be going to a different school. That document will move with Frankie. Yes. And the people, in theory, that school in Norman, Oklahoma, wherever it is, will be able to follow it and be able to visualize, this goal says that within, X amount of time, Frankie does X amount of X thing this many times. And it helps, all of the goals should help support Frankie and his development and his progress. So it's a wonderful thing. And when a child graduates from high school, if they're going on, the IEP doesn't have to follow him or her, doesn't have to follow the child. But how many has heard that a lot of colleges are closing? Right? Colleges want to retain their students, so they're very interested in supporting them. Supporting doesn't mean not making them do their work, right? Again, we're all struggling. We all have our sensory and we can all be dysregulated, but we have to go to work, right? Or we have to do whatever we have to do, right? So it's how can we build this capacity, right? And so for those families, you might say, and I know, I shied away from support groups. I didn't want to go to a support group. I don't need a support group. I'm from a big family. Who needs a support group? I got one. But so that's tough. But then if you say, oh, Autism Up has a Lego group, it's free, right? And we're also, during the summer, they have like picnics on the playground. We're gonna have one before the week before summer school, and one for the week after summer school. And it's a way to meet other families, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, right, this is helpful. It's not just the group, it's realizing that you're not alone. It's realizing that your child could do better if they had these supports. Parents want to do well, but sometimes you get your blinders on, and it's really hard to open up to that, right? If you're normal, right? You're like, as I was saying, my son was doing fine, and then just like a couple of days ago, he said that, oh yeah, how do I do that? How do I make friends? I thought that box was checked off. It's not, clearly. I need to do some growing and opening up and rethinking things, right? But that's sometimes, we parents, that's what happens. And so saying, I heard there's this Lego group. They're gonna have these playground and popsicle events. We have a fabulous playground at Autism Up, the Golisano Autism Center. It's fenced in, so the children who do run, who do elope, you're safe. You're in a, so the parents tend to relax. The great thing, the children that play together their parents are the ones that would get along. So it's a nice matchmaking community event. It's free. There's popsicles, there's playground. What's wrong with that?
I would love to have that information.
The dates aren't up yet, but they're going to be on the autismup.org. If you go to the support services, all of those meetups are there. It's a great way to encourage families because it's hard. We all want our children. We want the best for them. And confound it, they confound us. Right?
I think the key, to me, the key statement you just made is because we as parents are in denial. So I'm trying to learn as much as I can about autism. I find it fascinating, but I also find it learning for me. I don't have a kid that's artistic, but I have a lot of friends that have kids that are autistic. And we here in the church have kids that are autistic. But what I want to learn is how do I interact with them when they're around? Because sometimes we just shake things off, like, I don't have to worry about that, that's not my kid or anything like that. But I want to learn as much as I can, so that's why I'm here.
I appreciate that, and I hope, just from watching you, right, you have something that's really wonderful about you, and you're very calm, or at least that's the way you're presenting. So I can imagine you during an event here, looking at that child and just giving a smile. That smile, which is a beautiful smile, by the way, and I'm not nice, I don't say things without meaning them. So it's a beautiful smile. That is going to go to the child's soul. Everyone understands kind. That's what I always say. Sometimes when we're looking for employees, I was like, we can train anybody, but we can't teach kindness. So I would rather get a kind, loving person than the smartest person, because we can train anyone. But that natural, I want to know how to relate. Stay calm, stay cool. If you see someone's running for the door, you don't have to do anything. Sometimes you can just stand. And then if it's a child who runs, if the door's blocked, they're not getting through it, hopefully, right? Well, I know. I've been gone through also. And one of the things I didn't really talk about too much, but is your nonverbal language, right? I'm short. I like to stand like this a lot. I like the Wonder Woman pose. I put my hand. It's very comfortable, but it's very menacing, right? So I do this. I can put this down and grab it onto this thing. You can use the wipe afterwards. So there's a simple, and that's why I like to wear pants with pockets or something, even skirts with pockets, because watch my shoulders, right? And now, watch my shoulders. Put your, yes, I do. I say it's doing the cowboy. But putting your thumbs in your pockets and like shifting your weight to one side, all of a sudden you're like as mellow could be, ma'am. You know, so watch your body language. Watch the yelling around the edges of your voice, right? Just tone. And always the smile and kindness will get you just about anywhere. And I know that sounds super whatever. I don't mean to make it sound simplistic, because it's hard. It's hard when a child is escalated to keep your cool, right? When they're throwing things or banging on the back, and you're just like, I'm just trying to hear what they're saying, right? So if you see somebody banging, I always have what I call my bag of tricks. You know, do you have Kleenex? I used to wear, I'm still wearing, I used to wear lots of like costume jewelry that I didn't care about, and I'd give it to like my son to play with. Maybe that's why he's so good at opening and fixing things, you know. Different watch bands, different things. Again, he had busy hands. So if you see somebody pounding, one, they're looking for that sensory input. It's also a sound. So which one do you think it is? And so if it's this, heck, everyone's like sitting behind the person who's making faces at the child. Come on, you know? These are good things. If you see that maybe your face is too much, you know, do you have a pack of, Kleenex is tricky because it could be shredded, but still, there's vacuums, right? Right, there's a vacuum in this building, I'm guessing. Let them shred. I mean, if it's that escalated and whatever, shredding's not the worst thing, right? But that quiet engagement, yeah.
My grandson certain noises really bother him, like the hand dryer in the public bathrooms, and that kind of limits where we can take him or how long we can be out, because he won't use the restroom because of that noise. I was wondering, is there a way to get him used to it?
Sure. It's like brushing teeth, right? Anything, like some people don't like the children don't like their teeth brushed, or their hair cut with the clippers, you know, clippers? Mm-hmm. But if you think about it, the hand dryers is like a blow dryer, right? My daughter has gorgeous, like full curly hair, and I have this stuff. And so I never really need a blow dryer because my hair just dries like in literally 10 minutes, just dries. But I do have one of her blow dryers, and our son didn't like the clippers and things, so we started desensitizing. So remember the child I talked about with the spaghetti sauce? That's desensitization, right? And so I don't mean pull their hair, it's a hair thing, but okay, for the noise. you know, have a blow dryer going on in one room. And then just bring it a little bit closer. Or even, you know, if his feet are wet, say, ooh, I'm gonna dry your feet with the dryer. You know what I mean? So it's getting closer and closer. And then if you're going, let's say you're going to Syracuse. I don't know why you're going to the State Fair in Syracuse, right? And you know you're going to have to use the restrooms. Okay, so when you know, remember the social stories? So you can get some pictures. We're going to be going to the State Fair. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. And if you have to go to the bathroom, you know, they have blow dryers. And it's basically going to be like the one, and when we blue dry, thank you, stumbling there, your feet, but even, you know, even when you're blow drying the feet, then you go to the knees. And then you say, ooh, let's dry your hands with that. It might take weeks, but the State Fair is not till the end of August, right? Things you have to work at, like the hair cutting. We say, when you're sitting with your child, tug their hair. And I don't mean pull their hair. I mean, you know, little tugs. Get used to them their hair being touched, right? Little things like that to start that desensitization, that they're safe, that just because you hear a zzz near your ear doesn't mean, you know, you have to startle, right? I know what that is.
There's other noises that are just as loud, don't bother them at all.
It's yeah, and he panics, like he will not use the bathroom, will go anywhere. Gotta go home, and we have to take him home. He will not. I mean, we'll bring him in, and he is panicking, fearful, you know, but bathrooms he'll use the one here, but he will not come to church. I don't know what it is. We'll bring him in, we'll do whatever we can, and when we take him, we'll bring him to, he has to go in the nursery to play. And then one time he was doing communion and offering, and he would see him, even like on TV. And then we were in the nursery, and he looked up, and it wasn't him. And he said, Papa, and he was frantic, screaming, hollering, Papa. It just flipped him out.
How old is he?
He's 5 now.
So I think those visual supports, that consistency, knowing what's going to, you know, the days that you are giving communion, say, okay, Papa's going to be doing communion. He won't be, you won't see him up there, but he's going to be seated in, you know, and you could even take a picture.
Just to tell him.
Yeah.
And what about texture food? He eats like 5 things. And you have to make it the same way, the same texture, the same seasoning, and his food is just limited, and it's getting more limited. I used to make him broccoli. If it's not the same look, the same texture, he won't even look at it.
Remember?
I said broccoli. Well, that's what he used to eat.
No broccoli bubble gum for Tina. Absolutely not. And that's a huge thing.
Yeah, it's like
So-
he eats nothing.
So, again, it's one, rule out physiological things. Does, you know, he's 5, does he have the 6-year molars coming in? So is that why all of a sudden he's pulling back? Does it hurt? I'm just saying,
Yeah.
rule out those things. Has he started getting terrible gas? So he's having indigestion. Is he constipated? So rule out all that, and then it's really a slog with the children who have limited eating. They have, I don't know the name of her clinic, Kimberly Brown. If you Google Kimberly Brown, Rochester, New York, meal times await. We're going to be having a picnic, a feeding picnic at Autism Up in July. And I would try to attend if I were you. Kim is going to be doing, she's Dr. Brown, but I know her, so she's just Kim. She's fantastic, but she's going to have a feeding clinic, and then Felicia Thayer, our occupational therapist, is going to piggyback in with sensory things, because one, you were saying about the broccoli, if you cook it differently, so it could be textural. It could be his mouth. Does he have?
It's just, anything. He'll look at it and he won't even touch it. Or whatever he do, he'll fill it on his lip first. Like even he'll eat strawberries and apples and he'll take it and he'll rub it on his lip. And it better be the same texture.
Yep.
Or it's not gonna go in his mouth.
Does he eat like Cheez-Its or like a processed food that he really, is there one processed food?
He's with us Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And so we do our best to not feed him junk,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. But it's just specific apples, strawberries. It used to be broccoli. I used to make him some tofu.
It's pineapple.
Yeah.
Oh, pineapples.
And toast.
But let me tell you something. How many of you have eaten an apple and it's bad? Right? An apple can taste different. A pineapple, I have a pineapple sitting on my counter and I'm looking at it, I'm eyeballing it because it doesn't look quite right. Is it going to be a good one or a bad one? Fruits and vegetables can change taste, but like Cheez-Its should always taste the same.
And whenever we have them, it's the freshest of everything.
Yeah.
We don't ever want them to not ever eat it again. So it's like right from the grocery store, he gets nothing old.
Yeah.
Nothing.
So,
You know.
yeah, you might look, so the U of R has a good feeding clinic, and but so does Kim Brown. And Kim used to be at the U of R.
How would you find out about these feeding clinics?
I should be able, yeah, you could Google them. Hold on. 273, I don't know the number. I know my phone number. You could call me at work and I can get you those numbers. It is on their website, yeah. And Dr. Aponte, Courtney Aponte, is the lead in the feeding clinic at the U of R. Do you have a pen?
I got a pen right here.
273 4513. That's me, and then I can get you that number. Say, hey, what's the feeding clinic? And I can. Yep. But I would also look at the Autism Up picnic. I think they're going to have. Yeah, that should be fun. But it's.
I like that idea about the hand dryer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's desensitizing. You know, at the Rochester Airport they have the hand dryers, the Dyson ones. Yeah.
That's the one that got him.
But you know, it's freaky. Your skin is all the way up to your elbows. That's weird. It's so cool. I love it.
He won't go in the bathroom.
Yeah.
He won't go in
Well,
the bathroom.
also think about bathrooms. They smell. They're echoey. They're you don't know. There's all those creepy people in there doing all sorts of creepy things. I have a good social story, and especially for boys. I didn't realize there was urinal etiquette, but apparently there's etiquette for this. But as they get older, your child, I don't know. I mean, I didn't know this until I saw the social story. I was like, oh, right. And so we've we have our own kind of little things. There's etiquette for women too, right? Once you're in the stall, you're not talking to the person next to you. And you're not making comments about you know what I mean? You're not talking unless you need toilet paper. And then that is totally okay. Gentlemen, I don't know about you, but in the woman's world, this is what do you have some toilet paper? Yes, I do, not a problem, right? So, but it's really working at it and being consistent and staying calm. It's not a problem. If he throws something, don't say, oh my God, I can't believe you threw that strawberry. So I got you the best strawberry. I love my father-in-law says the best thing. When he drops something in the kitchen, because he's a very good cook, he'll say, well, it can't fall further than that. Right? Where my husband drops something, he goes, oh, I can't believe I dropped that. Oh, it's like, it's okay. It cleans up. Don't worry about it. But his father's like, right? So keeping stress around food to the minimum. Right?
I have a great niece who's been diagnosed when she was 3 or 4, and I was told that autism sometimes come out with gifts, and we just found she's 8 or 9 years old now, and her mother is she's an artist. Now we find out that Sarai is doing the same thing. She can look at something and just start. I mean, she doesn't, she just copies right out and does cartoon. Her favorite is cartoons. Also, she started looking at concerts. Then she found out that she liked playing the violin. So my niece put her in the class for violin. They had their first concert at Rochester, Rush Henrietta this past Wednesday, and it was all kids who were autistic, and I was blown away how all those kids were playing the different instruments.
It's amazing, and it's so good for you, right? It's such a those are wonderful skills. Now there's a place that's been there for decades. It's an animation studio. You said two things, drawing and music. Animatus Studio, A-N-I-M-A-T-U-S. I don't know where it is now. I know it used to be kind of near the Eastman Theater. Okay, vaguely in that area, right? But they've been around for decades. Nothing phases them. And for a child who draws and does music, what a wonderful thing, right? Brings stories to life if she has that storytelling. And music tells stories, right? My favorite type of music tells stories, right? So, yeah, it is exciting. Hello. You're really talented. Look at that. I don't know. I'd be like this. I always say, you got 10 fingers, you got one head and one neck. Head and neck are priorities here, right? So yeah, it's finding and it's so exciting when any one of our children finds their gift, and then you just make sure that you nourish it, right? Well, I've kept you here an awfully long time. I'm so grateful. If you ever have any questions, you have all sorts of ways to contact me. I have social stories. I have all sorts of tricks. That bag, I don't have many treats though. I usually bring candy, but then there was no. I didn't bring candy because you had the signs out there. Thought that would be. And no broccoli chewing gum. Is it the texture that you don't like, or the smell? Because broccoli stinks. But it tastes good.
I don't like the smell with heads on it. Like it will fumble all over the place with the Lord.
Asparagus is good.
I like asparagus.
I like asparagus too.